Let's talk about the Pump.fun token, because currently nobody else does. And there is a correlation between attention and price. When everybody talks about an asset, the price tends to be inflated, it's time to sell. When nobody talks about something, it's time to buy. Let's have a look at whether or not it makes sense to buy the Pump token right now. Because interestingly enough, Pump.fun appreciated by 35% in the last week. Other meme-related tokens did not do as well. Yet the attention is slowing down. This is not the first video on Pump. The very first one outperformed the average video on this channel, right? The average video is here, this gray area, and that first video is the blue line. Have a look at the subsequent videos. We see that over time, the attention tends to slow down. It tends to be lower and lower. And the recent video, published 1 week ago, was relatively speaking an underperformer. Attention currently is low. And that's a potential opportunity. Now, there's a lot of correlation within crypto. When Bitcoin is going up, then most other altcoins go up as well. When Bitcoin is going down, most altcoins go down. Now, the Pump token is listed on the Solana chain. So most correlation between Pump and a larger cryptocurrency is Pump versus SOL. And so I like to look at those relative valuation charts because it gives us an idea whether or not we do get the additional risk of that altcoin compensated. When Pump launched, there was a massive dump because people were worried about the tokenomics. More on that in a second. Then came the buyback program, which stabilized the price. Now we're pretty much in the middle of a trading range with a potential close support. The Pump.fun ecosystem itself isn't necessarily growing. It peaked at the beginning of the year. But there's now a dedicated decentralized exchange, right? Pump Swap. And that tends to get more and more capital over time. Here's the TVL measured in US dollars, and here's the TVL measured in Solana. On the entire Solana chain, we saw 10.6 billion worth of trading volume in the last 24 hours. Pump.swap was 8 of those 10 billion. And so that then begs the question, right? When the total value locked is only at around 100 million, but the trading volume is close to 8 billion, is there potentially some manipulation here? The trading volume partially turns into fees, and that turns into buybacks. So we're getting very close to 100% of the Pump Swap trading fees getting used for buybacks. Since launch of the program, already 125 million worth of Pump was purchased through the program. Over here, we see the actual dollar amount that gets purchased, Solana amount that gets purchased every day. Yesterday, that was more than 8,000 SOL or 1.8 million worth of the token. On the Solana chain, we've got now more than 100,000 holders of the token. But not all of those holders are created equal. Some of them might just own a few cents worth of the token, while others might own hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of the token. So you have to look at this in a bit more detail. Now, on the left side, we see the number of wallets that have at least a slight sliver of Pump. So there's a minimum holding threshold of 0. We are counting every single wallet. We're now at 100,000. Once we introduce a minimum holding of just one single token, which by the way is worth less than 1 cent, then the number of holders is already dropping by 25%. Once we make the cutoff at 14,000 tokens, so that's now $100 worth of the token, we are only at 22,000 wallets. So 80% of the wallets that hold Pump tokens, they've got less than $100 worth of the token. So let's go even higher with the minimum holding thresholds. Let's have a look at the wallets that really matter. So the wallets that have at least $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 worth of Pump. That's done the following charts. So on the left side, we've got 140,000 tokens as minimum holding threshold. At the current price, that's roughly $1,000 worth of the token. In the middle, it's 10,000. On the right, it's 100,000. We can see that the larger wallets aren't necessarily increasing in number anymore. The very small wallets are, but once we go beyond $10,000 worth of the token, we rather see long-term selling. So it seems like this is the whales dumping on the small retail investor, but the price stays stable because of the buyback program. The whales are not impressed by the buyback program, but the small retail investor definitely is. Now, besides the accumulation on the spot market directly on the Solana chain by the retail investor, we've also got the demand through the perpetual futures, through the levered bets on the price. So in the last 24 hours, we saw 133 million worth of trading volume on Binance on the spot market. But compare this with the perpetual futures market. Here we had more trading volume, 565 million. Most investors that bet on the price with leverage on the perpetual futures are betting on rising prices. So the funding rate is positive. The longs have to pay the shorts to get more price exposure. Here is the open interest over time. So how many bets are currently made on the Pump token. And there is a correlation with the spot price. We aren't necessarily very high, we aren't necessarily very low, so the perp market is in balance. The same can be said for the trading volume. Again, it makes sense to rather sell when attention and trading volume is high. It makes sense to rather buy when attention and trading volume is low. We aren't necessarily historically low on trading volume, but we aren't peaking either. The question always is, of course, what happens long term? And my impression is that the buyback program is likely going to continue so that the price stays relatively high, so that then once the unlock happens for the insiders and for the early investors, that they can then sell for those elevated prices. So the team is probably working with the plan that a lot of that value that now gets used to push up the Pump token then can get extracted once the unlocks happen. Now the first official unlock for the team is in July of 2026, but we don't know if there's any over-the-counter deals happening in the background where maybe parts of the supply is already getting sold off. That's, for example, what happened with the Ohm token by Mantra DAO. If you got some value out of this video, feel free to give this a like. It helps the channel grow. Feel free to also subscribe. I publish videos regularly. Feel free to also check out the premium membership. The link is over here. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. This is where I share how I make currently money in this market. I mainly bet on relative valuation trades. So I bet on bad altcoins to underperform Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. And these kind of deltas tend to grow quite large over time. It is explained in more detail on the website, thebitcoinstrader.com. See you over there or see you in the next video. Cheers!